Well, hello and welcome back to Little State Big Voices with myself, Shahida, and my fabulous co-host, Tracy. How are you?
Hey y'all, I'm good.
So hopefully you had a very good week last week, and we're starting off this week with some, a big guest, but we're also ending some good things that happened last month, or what was it, Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yes, Latinx heritage, Hispanic heritage, whatever. Pick your poison, whatever you want to call it. It's all colonizer shit, either way you say it. But it was September 15th to October 15th.
Ma'am, she be coming out guns
I'm
blazing.
coming in hot because it's controversial. Latinx is, Latino is controversial. It's a little better than Hispanic because
Mhm.
that's definitely the colonizer. But either way, the Latino folks, whatever you want to call yourself, us people who come from Central America, South America, Spain, who speak the Spanish language and then love and enjoy our Spanish culture. A lot of Independence Days are on September 15th, so that's why that kicks off in the middle of the month that way.
And we actually had a presentation at my job. My job does a fabulous job on like recognizing all cultures. And I learned so much of like the Guatemalan culture, the who else was it? It was Guatemala, Mexico, and oh, I can't remember what the last one was. Oh, I feel bad, but learned so much and just how they were colonized, like, and how those people in those countries were very open to people coming in. Let me feed you, sit down at the table. Let me,
Hmm.
let me introduce you to our customs. And then they brought out guns. Brought
It's
out
the tale as old as time. It's what
guns.
happened in North America, and the indigenous people were from North America, Central America, South America. Those were the native peoples of those places, or even like places like Puerto Rico. There were native Indians there. Those were the original indigenous peoples there, and then slowly but surely, folks came over and used our kindness for weakness, basically, and then here we are.
So, so this that month has ended, but of course, every culture is celebrated all year round. So we didn't do a show on that, but we'll definitely be
I
bringing.
did go to a quinceañera expo,
Mhm,
my first ever quinceañera expo, and
mhm.
that was fun. That was here in Providence at the downtown Marriott, which is actually right up the street from me. And that's a nice cultural thing. That's kind of the parallel to a Sweet 16 in the United States, but instead it's on the 15th birthday for young ladies. Um, and that was actually fun. It was nice to see all of the vendors with all their wares and the beautiful quinceañera dresses. So
Yeah, I wish I had gone. That was, I had never been to one or one of the quinceañera's birthdays. I've never been, oh, it's not a birthday, it's a coming out.
no, it's a birthday.
It
It's
is.
your 15th birthday, yeah, and but it's also a coming out with like your court. You have your court, but
Mhm.
there's another expo coming up, so maybe we can make that one together. There's one in Massachusetts.
So I never understood why that 15th, is it just the celebration into like going from child to womanhood or
It's kind of that, but if we really want to get, because like you said, I always come guns blazing. If you really want to get deep down with it, it's kind of like, here's my beautiful daughter. Please marry her.
oh, okay. I get it.
She's now producing
Okay.
eggs.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
that's really what that was. But it's evolved. We're a little more modern now. It's really more it's like a Sweet 16. Yeah, which I'm sure Sweet 16 is probably rooted in the same thing. It's a debutante thing. It's your coming out, and it's like, okay, in a couple of years, she'll be ready for the marriage market. Look at my beautiful daughter.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
You know what's very funny about so I'm doing Duolingo Spanish. I took Spanish all through like high school, college, everything, straight A's. I can read it, but my pronunciation is horrible. And I think a lot of Americans have an issue because I don't know, the way our tongue is just flat. It's It's just flat. So, that's my problem. But in one of the lessons, you have to listen to a story and then, kind of like write out what happened in the story. So the
Mm.
story was there was an American girl and she was going to a party, and then the Spanish girl was like, it starts at 5 o'clock. And she said, but we don't have to be there at 5 o'clock. It's almost rude to show up at 5 o'clock. And the American girls go, no, but I want to go. What time is it? Whatever. And then she's like, 5:30. It should be time to go now. She's like, no. Then she's like, 6 o'clock. She said, that's only for the closest relatives to show up at 6 o'clock. So they didn't leave for the party until 7. And I thought that was hysterical because every time my Dominican girlfriend invites me to something, she's like, it's at 6, but it's not starting until like 8. So,
So it's a cultural nuance that and it's I kind of like that the app is giving you both the practical
mhm,
and then that nuanced side of Latin culture. It's very similar in I know in African culture, like if they
mhm.
say 7 o'clock and they will tell you like if you're there before 9, we're still getting dressed. Shahida, how many times have you come to pick me up? Okay. And you're like, I'm gonna be here at 6:45. Shahida will be outside first of all at 6:30. So that's one, which is I love a friend who's on time and can be punctual because it's difficult for
I
me.
don't rush people. I don't
She
rush.
doesn't rush me, but she's outside not only at 6:30. Now at the time at the 6:45 when I'm supposed to be coming outside, I barely have clothing on. I'm not even dressed.
So you have it bad. You got that. You got your Latino side, and then you got your African side. They just not
Oh,
coordinated.
like
They
honestly, I'll tell my mother, this happens every time. I'll tell my mother, I'll be at your house at 10 o'clock. This lady knows not to look for me before 11. I'm not coming. Like, I may be leaving my house at the time I said I was going to come to your house.
hmm I was not always so punctual. I don't know when. I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more punctual. I am very guilty of the lie that people say, and when people say, "Where are you?" and I'm like, "Oh, I just got in the car," knowing damn well I just got in the shower. It's only maybe like the last 10 years I have like tightened it up. But no, I was not like that a while ago. So I
It
get.
depends on what it is. Now, when we had our interview with our special guest, I wasn't I ready with bells on?
Yeah, I think you called me before. Yeah, you
I
were.
was so it depends on what it is, and it's not no insult to my friends. Just
Mhm.
but if in a more casual situation, I'm just gonna be taking my CP time, and I'm okay with that. But if I have an important work situation, I'm gonna be on time. If I have a flight to catch, I'm gonna be super early. But
Mhm.
anything else is flexible.
It's flexible. It's all relative. So, anyway, we are in October, of course. We're in that middle part of October, and
Mhm.
we have to recognize the two, what is it? October is breast cancer awareness
Yes.
and domestic violence awareness.
Yes, both very crucial, very important. And building that awareness. And I mean, everywhere you go, you see the pink ribbons and the bows. But I think that until you know someone who's been directly impacted by breast cancer or even by domestic violence, it's kind of just a thing that's out there and you feel bad about it, but there are so many ways that we can help. But when you know someone who's been impacted, it's just even that level that's deeper for you. And a lot of this breast cancer can certainly, if you take some preventative precautions, a lot of times if it's caught early enough, it can be prevented from being a death sentence. Our friend and book club sister Donna had held a really great event a couple of weeks ago focusing on this, and she actually brought professionals in from Dana-Farber, her own oncologist as well, to speak to the fact that if pre-screening can be so crucial in preventing breast cancer, but then if you are diagnosed, there are some things that still, especially as BIPOC women, enough research is not there for us. So there are even some studies that can be done on women who do not have breast cancer to help women of color when they do, develop breast cancer. So that's something. And then domestic violence, as preventable as it should be, it's still so pervasive in culture. So a lot of it is communication, talking, and women having safe places to go. Women and men, whoever's being
Hmm.
domestically abused, having a safe place.
So
And
I want to jump back
yeah.
to the breast cancer because I heard a
Yeah.
story this week. It was about Ananda Lewis. Remember her?
Yeah.
Right? And so she is in stage 4 breast cancer.
Wow, I did not know that.
But part of the reason why she's in stage 4 cancer is because she refused early on treatment. That she felt like she actually said her body is intelligent and would expel the bad toxins on their own.
Okay.
And a lot of people do have, I know it's hard sometimes to trust doctors, especially as African American women, because we know that we have, issues where they are not hearing us. But this is one of those instances where she was not hearing them, I think. I don't like to take a lot of medicine, but I like to live. Point blank. And
Yeah.
I want to take whatever I can to as preventive medicine. And one of the main concerns for her, which I understand totally, is they were saying that she needed to do a double mastectomy.
Mastectomy. Yeah.
So she was up, she felt that at that time that she still feels that way. So she feels like she made the right decision, and that if she has, if she's in stage 4, then that's just the way it was going to play out, because that's what her body is dealing with. And the medicines and the chemo and the losing hair, those are things that she decided that she did not want to do. But breast cancer is one of the most survivable cancers that any woman, including Black women, have can go through. As long as you are detecting it early, and as long as you are getting the necessary, medication, including the chemo or whatever else that they may advise you, most women will survive, a breast cancer, what's the word,
Diagnosis.
diagnosis. They will survive that. And I've know at least 4 people in the last 5 years have had to deal with that. And it's very unfortunate for anybody to get to that point where they're just gonna, reject the science and medical help, because they believe, and a lot of stuff that she was spewing out was really the stuff that you see on these, YouTube
The
channels,
holistic stuff.
and yeah, a
Mhm.
lot of the things that she was saying. So, be aware, talk to your family, but and then I guess she's doing what is best for her. But I think as it gets worse, I think she will regret that decision.
And I'm not here to judge that woman. It's not what I would have done. It's not, it's, I like, honestly, I would have gone, if they said double mastectomy, I'd be like, cut them off. Because like you said, I want to live. Like, I want to give myself every chance. And there are women that have double mastectomies and they still, succumb to their cancer. But I'm about prevention. I'm really trying to get my mammograms I do get my mammograms every single year. I'm not even trying. I make sure I'm on their behind to
Mhm,
have my mammogram ready for me to go. And then they'll be like, ma'am, it hasn't even been a year. I'm like, okay, I'm just making sure that
mhm,
you have me on the books. I get that mammogram every year. I get my pap smear. I think it's every 3 years now, which I think is ridiculous. It should be more often. I get as many preventative tests as I can. But also some of it is just your own knowing your own body and observing your own body. So, I mean, we've been learning how to do breast exams, at least I have since I was a kid. They've taught us, you check your own breast. And also one of the things I found interesting from when I went to Donna's event is that they were saying just even looking at your breasts in the mirror, you know, something look different? Do you feel something? It's paying attention to your body and the things that your body are doing. Now, you could have breast cancer and not know it and maybe not feel anything because it could be, so deep inside, but that's where the mammograms come in. As much preventative stuff as you can do, because the thing is, by the time it's detected, you got to figure out now what stage are you in. So, like you said, you don't start off at stage 4, you start off at stage 1 and you progress to stage 4. So I understand this woman wanting to try to do something as natural as possible, but I too would trust the science.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I would go for the double mastectomy as well because they can build them better.
I see. I didn't want to be. That was in the back of my head. I was like, "Girl, Angelina Jolie had it done, and her breasts look good. They look nice."
Mm, I
She actually didn't have breast cancer. She just did it in because she had a family
yeah,
history.
yeah,
And
I
she was like, just take them off,
mhm,
build them new, and I'm cool with that. And that's not fair. That was kind of extreme. And she has billions of dollars to do something like that. But I think when it's being offered to you medically as a treatment option, it's something to consider. I mean, if my hair falls out, if, I have to grow my hair back, I'm willing to lose all of those things
mhm. Not my life.
to right, because I can get better. And I think too, part of my experience is I lived with a cancer survivor. My grandmother had cancer of the larynx. So when I was very young, maybe middle school, my grandmother went through cancer treatments. She
Mhm,
was a smoker and she smoked like Central American cigarettes that had no type of FDA standards or anything like that. She developed cancer of the larynx. She did radiation. She did chemotherapy. She lost her hair, and my grandmother lived for over a decade after that, and
mhm,
that was in the 80s.
mhm.
So we're more advanced. We're more modern now. Cancer does not have to kill people,
No,
especially breast cancer.
no, it doesn't. And that is again, I can't judge any woman's decision, but
Right.
I do want other women to make sure that they are informed about it. You definitely can survive this. And like I like what you said, it doesn't start off at 4, it starts off as 1. And the only way that you'll know it's 1 is if you're going to your doctors regularly, you're getting, the tests that you need, you're doing your breast exams. That's the only way you know and want to catch it at 1 when it is most survivable. You don't want
Mhm.
no one wants to get to stage 4. No one.
Right.
She's in what? She's like her early 40s. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
It's very sad, but also that's her
decision.
decision, and she sounds like she's of sound mind to make her own decisions. So this is how she wants to live her life. And just I think it's important to know that there are options. And especially in our area in New England, we have the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which is their whole thing is studying cancer and preventing cancer.
Mhm.
So if you live in a city or near a city with a major cancer facility, lean into their resources. You don't have to have cancer to go on their website and learn how to prevent cancer.
Right.
And
No.
sometimes it's environmental. That's the other thing I learned from Donna's event is
Mhm.
that sometimes it's biological and it's hereditary. Other times it's environmental.
Mhm.
And that can mean a number of things. So, yeah, it's important to learn more about these diseases.
Yeah. Right. So also early voting started in Rhode Island.
Mhm.
I early voted. Tracy early voted. But I want people to be aware of the questions that are on the back of the ballot. Pay attention. And I would suggest going and they usually do mail out like, a packet that tells you what each question means and how it will affect you to an extent. So you can get some basic information from that, but at least be knowledgeable of those questions. I was thrown off by the very first question. We're still kind of thrown off by that very first question. I wish I had asked someone more
Mhm.
knowledgeable about it, but I did get a flyer in the mail after I voted, and it was from Planned Parenthood. So whenever I see something that says fund the state or fund this program, fund, I usually want to fund that. When it comes to private colleges, institutions, I usually do not want to fund those. But state schools, Rick, URI, definitely want to help fund those for, people who, have, less money and are trying to be go to school those ways. So the funding from the state is fine. But anyway, for question one, I was a little hesitant on. I didn't quite understand it, so I'm just imploring people to go and read and understand what each and every question means and how that will affect you. It's on the back of the ballot. They will tell you that at the polling station.
Mhm.
But and if you can, they are expecting an 80 to 90% turnout for this election, and it's going to be a lot of people, a lot of frustration, a lot of people trying to change your vote before you even walk in. You might be harassed, but there's going to be heavy police presence as well. So, be aware of that. But if you can vote early, please vote early, because I think it'll take a lot off of like poll workers who are working that day, and try and be kind to the poll workers, please.
Mhm. And go to vote.org. That's
Mhm.
anywhere in the United States. That will tell you where your polling station is. That will tell you how you can register if you have not already, what deadlines are to be expected. It gives you a huge rundown. It talks about if you have a disability. I voted by mail. That was my choice because, like I have been telling you guys, I had a surgery recently. I'm not trying to stand in line for like 2, 3 hours. Not that my girl is not worth it. But I just knew for me, physically, it would be better for me to mail my ballot in. And you can not only can you mail your ballot in through US Postal Service, you can also, there are designated drop boxes where you can drop off your mail in ballot. So if you haven't already requested it, we're kind of close to the deadline if it hasn't maybe already passed.
I
So
think
now we're in the next stage where you could still do early voting though.
And you can go into your local city hall. I went to my town hall to vote, walked in, walked out. Nobody's there. Usually during the day, it was like 12 o'clock on a Friday. But so if you can, I would really suggest trying to early vote, only because you don't want to have to. I have never waited in a line to vote ever in my entire
I have.
lifetime for 2 3 hours. So when I hear that, I am just absolutely appalled, because you should not, and most people have to work that day. So to take 2 hours out of your day, that's why it should be a national holiday to actually go ahead and vote. But to take 2 hours and stand in line to vote for your next president and your congress people and senators, that's horrible. That's horrible. The longest I've
It
ever
is.
waited in line was probably 15 minutes.
Really? So definitely I've waited at least 45 minutes to an hour, especially during the Barack Obama
Mhm,
elections. I
mhm,
definitely, and I was happy to do it, and I brought my kids
mhm.
because even though they weren't voting age at the time, I wanted them to understand the process. But I implore any parents who have kids that maybe just turned 18 and just now eligible to vote, talk to your kid about voting. And
Mhm.
there are even provisions that can be taken if your kid is away at school and they're registered to vote in your state. So go on that vote.org because it gives you all that information. It even talks about how your child who's voting eligible can cast their ballot for their state even if they're away at school in another state.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very important. But again, it's supposed to be an extremely big election.
It
I
is. It is huge.
80 to 90%, they've said they've never seen or heard numbers. We already see early voting in Georgia has been astronomical numbers, which is insane, which I'm happy for. North Carolina as well. So
I'd love to see those states turn blue. If Georgia could turn blue, whoo,
it turned blue for Biden. Biden won
I
Georgia.
know.
So,
If it can turn blue again, I'd love to see it.
and for my sisters and brothers in the southern states, especially Mississippi, because I had a conversation with someone from Mississippi, so a very dear friend who does not believe in voting because he says voting doesn't matter. They've already selected who's going to win, so it doesn't matter what he or anybody else does. And now Mississippi is one of those states that is last in everything: education, health care,
Food security.
definitely food security, income. It's just last in everything, and they have always, and I lived there for 7 years, had a Republican governor. And honestly, it's horrible, the mind game that has been played on a lot of these people in these southern states, especially black men, that they don't matter and that their vote doesn't matter. And sir, if it didn't matter, they would not be trying to get rid of, disenfranchise your vote every single election. And if it didn't matter, then how come they're not telling white men not to vote? They're telling you not to vote, and that your ballot means nothing, but it means something. So I'm imploring all the people who might be listening that are in those southern states, please get out and vote. See what's on your ballot. I don't know what ballot questions you might have on the back, or even if you have any, but that's your first step in fighting for your future in the United States. And if you want to continue to see it go the way it's going, and you have it worse off than we do here, it's don't be in Florida. Nobody wants America to turn into Florida. So just,
Not at all.
vote. It's very important, and no one is here to shame anybody about it, but you do have to do your research. You cannot listen to podcasters. You cannot, myself included,
Us
not
included.
podcast,
Draw your own conclusions.
not listen to YouTube, heroes or whatever they call themselves. You can't listen to them. You have to go and find out for yourself, and be honest. Go to reputable sites. Do not stick with these sites that are, all about hating or giving misinformation. Go to reputable sites, because even some of the reputable sites are disgusting too, but at least you're going to get a little bit of both sides. And
Right.
listen, and actually listen to the candidates. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
listen to their rallies if you can stand it, but you have to listen to what they are saying and what they are proposing to do, and understand what each person's policy really is. Don't be hoodwinked by, flash words or anything that you might think means for you. It might not mean anything for you, because when Donald Trump says he wants to give police full immunity,
Yep.
that's not for you, sir. It's
No,
not.
it's not. That means that they can take someone's life, destroy families, destroy lives, all of that, just and just with no repercussions. That's not okay.
It's
That
not.
is not okay.
So you have to
Because
look.
yeah,
So
just do the Googles. Go to the second page if you have to Google. Make sure you're making good informed decisions.
and I was gonna say, step out of your misogyny if that's part of the problem. Because if you don't think that a black woman can lead, then you just don't know history. Because black women have let women, period, black or white, because Hillary would have made a damn good president. Getting nothing twisted about that. But if you don't think a woman can lead, look at other countries that have had women leaders. Look at the leaders that we have here in the United States. My father said to me when I told him the story about the guy saying that, he didn't think women to lead. He said, well, maybe he should tell those men who were led by Harriet Tubman to go back into slavery because
Right.
they followed her. I was like, look at my dad.
Listen,
My
big
dad.
big that's amazing because I never even thought about that. I'm about to put that in my arsenal for an argument. But Big Daddy Colonizer England was led by a woman. Come on now. Argentina, which, people consider Latin countries to be so misogynistic, they chose a female leader decades ago. Iran. Come on. Like, it's who the best candidate is. If Kamala was a woman who I felt could not lead, I would not vote for her.
Exactly.
This woman is more than qualified, especially with the bar being set as low as it is thanks to her competitor.
Mhm.
She's like, honestly, this should just be a slam dunk for her. Her not getting in would just show how backwards this country really is.
And we will use that leeway into our guest. You
And I also want to say, I am a good American. Like, I enjoy being an American. It's not that I don't like my country. I don't say things about America because I don't appreciate being an American. It's because I know that the promise of America is not what's being delivered. If we actually had the America that was promised to people, to everyone, this country would be really unstoppable. So it's just leveling up, and I think President Harris will level this country up.
and I agree with you. I'm a proud American too. But being a proud American means, in my opinion, wanting it to be better, wanting it to be better for everyone. And that's what we all kind of fight for. People who say we're not proud because we criticize and recognize the history of this country. No,
Mhm.
you're the one that's not patriotic. You're the one that doesn't care because you're being selfish. Because you don't want an America for all people. You want an American for your people or just you. So we're all and I always said Black Americans are probably the most patriotic people on this country in this land, specifically because we have been dealt the hardest blows, and yet we still love this space that we've created for ourselves. We
And guess who also are some of the most patriotic people? Immigrants. When I tell you, immigrants will ride for that red, white, and blue. So it's interesting that the very people who are probably the proudest and will wave the flag because they appreciate the opportunity to
Mhm.
be able to come here and have a life of the promised democracy and freedom. Immigrants are some of the most loyal Americans that are out there. So those are things to keep in mind when you're thinking about, well, people are coming over here and taking away. We got to stop the lack mentality and we have to think about we have so much abundance. How do we balance that for all Americans? So, woosah on that.
And so, with that, I'm going to have Tracy give a great introduction. You know, her introductions are always fabulous on our upcoming guest, and that is Gabe Amo, Congressman Gabe Amo. Excuse me, be respectful, Shahida.
Yes, our Congressman Gabe Amo. So Congressman Amo, he's a native of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but he's built like a hugely impressive career in public service. He's been in leadership roles under both Presidents Biden and Obama. And he's also been a top advisor to our former governor, Gina Raimundo. He let a woman lead. You see what I'm saying here? In the White House, he connected communities nationwide with federal resources through transformative legislation like the American Rescue Plan, and he's led strategic responses to crises such as gun violence, an important topic that we often address here on our podcast, as well as public health emergencies. Another important thing that we've spoken about here that's happening nationwide. We have these emergencies. He's a summa cum laude graduate of Wheaton College and a Marshall Scholar at Oxford University. And he draws from his experiences growing up as a working class member of a family with roots from Liberia and Ghana. Now he's representing the Rhode Island's first district. He's our congressman, Gabe Amo, and he's here leading with a purpose, driving economic opportunity, advancing reproductive rights, okay, strengthening climate resilience, and safeguarding our democracy. So without further ado, Gabe Amo. It's a little Sheila E. We're just so happy
Yeah.
happy
Yeah, no, happy to dive in. Look, we're, in this sort of destabilized media environment, it's sort of imperative, I think, is for people in my jobs to find every place that people want you to talk and explain what you're doing, explain the work, because otherwise this lives in the shadows and then it erodes trust in government. So, I'm grateful that you asked, and hopefully we can have a good conversation for the next, 30, 40 minutes or whatever we have.
Maximize this time.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
know that you have a hard stop at 12:15.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but I have somebody here. Okay, yes, yeah. Oh, and is this part of it? Okay, great. See, hot mic. See, this is the thing. This is why I'm new to this, right? Yeah, no, that's great. But yeah, happy to start wherever you'd like.
So I'm Tracey, of course. This is Shahida, and you want to actually do the. We know that you are the son of a Ghanaian and a Liberian person, people who immigrated to this country. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience growing up with parents who come from elsewhere and how that affects your, how you feel about immigration and how you feel about the opportunities that are available to maybe explore that rhetoric and change how people think about it in a positive way?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll zoom out a little bit. So I, and where the office we're sitting in, our district office, is about 12 blocks from where I grew up in Pawtucket. I can see the Little League field where I played baseball right outside this window. So, for lack of a better term, I'm anchored, no pun intended, here in Rhode Island in this community. But I also bring to it the dual experience of being the son of two West African immigrants. My dad from Ghana, my mom from Liberia. Of all places they could meet. On one side of the Atlantic Ocean, they actually meet on this side in Providence, and like 8 out of 10 babies in Rhode Island. I was born at Women and Infants Hospital, and started my life in Providence before eventually coming to Pawtucket. And so for me, and layer on top of that, my identity as a Black person, right? And Blackness, we know, is multifaceted in this country, whether you are the descendant of enslaved people or folks who have come in the 20th century from, whether it's the Caribbean, Cape Verde, West Africa, in my instance, that's a layer of both that immigration story and Blackness, which those two things, of course, intersect and overlap. And what it means for me when I think about immigration is that I think it's a virtue. Immigration is a good thing. A lawful passage is a good thing. Having people come from all over the world wanting to be in America is the most American thing we have. Remember, everybody here, besides the native peoples who inhabited this land, is an immigrant. So 16 generations or one, we are all linked in a story where someone came before us, exhibited a great amount of hard work, grit, resilience, and determination to make our tomorrow better than today. And I say that often because that's my thesis statement for this work. Blended in that is immigration. That's how we have to talk about it. We have to talk about its virtues and its values, not the broad demonization that we see from some of the people I work with in Congress, from the 45th and former president, Donald Trump, is that demonization. But when we think about the goodness, whether it is in, the high skilled fields, whether it's in our colleges and universities, whether it is, our neighbors in our streets, there are so many people who build together this tapestry of America, and we will only grow, frankly, if we have a thoughtful, a rational, a law-based immigration policy where we continue to grow thoughtfully in this country, so that at all segments of our economy, we're the strongest we can be, and that America remains that city on a hill that everybody wants to be part of.
So, as I was saying earlier,
Yes.
you are everywhere and people are very welcoming to you. And I listened to a town hall that you did a couple of months ago. And one of the concerns was immigration and how it affected Rhode Island. And I think Tracy and I were talking about, like, just the economic parts of it in, in Rhode Island specifically. How do you reach out to those people who have negative views about immigrants, work with immigrants, and like that guy I work with, Joe, he's from Ghana. He's a great guy. Well, can't you extend that great guy experience to all? Like I see people really embracing you. So how do you get that, out there? Because I feel like I'm seeing a lot more Trump signs now, a lot more anxiety about immigrants. And it's something that every community has to deal with.
Exactly. Yeah, look, that's such a great question, because here's the thing, and you point out, and this is the thing that happens often in our lives where, that issue is a bad thing, but my experience with it is different. So, Kwame from Ghana, great guy, and he's a model immigrant, but everybody else, not so much. That's what we run into challenges with, because now that's also our gateway, our passageway to solving for some of our issues, is personalizing it, but also realizing that those personal stories extend to the characteristics and quality of so many in a place. And again, this is why, if we can solve for the issues that we have, the Southwest border is all dominant in the conversation. But we know that's not the only means by which folks may be here unlawfully, temporarily, that often happens. And so what it is we've got to localize the dialogue, right? Instead of it being this national thing. Look at what the senator from Ohio, who was running for vice president, said. He said he made up a story. He admitted to making up a story, but that just is emblematic of an issue when he was referring to Haitian folks who are here on temporary protective status in Utah. In Ohio, rather, his home state. And he said that, and then he nationalized the whole thing. And then all we were talking about for a week were whether these lies were true and reflective of the reality, right? Instead, what we should be thinking about is talking about the virtues, the benefits, risk and reward. We should talk about the rewards, the things that we benefit from, because that's how you get to Joe Q. Public, who himself is probably a third or fourth generation person from a Western European country or something like that, who will be more embracing if they understand what the benefits are, and importantly, what people like me in Washington are trying to do about it, about the challenges that we face, about the unlawful piece, about the lack of predictability, because I think that's ultimately what it gets to. People will create scapegoats, and then there are real costs into our system, and that we have to account for, whether it's on the healthcare side, whether it's education and others. So if we have a lawful, orderly process, if we say that our government officials are working to solve for that, and there are all these benefits to our economy, to our communities, then that moves us further along in the conversation around immigration. But none of that is simple. Right, everything I just laid out is a multi-step process, and I don't expect to get there overnight. But I use my platform to share my story, and hopefully that is one piece of the broader puzzle that we're solving for when we address the challenges that we face with immigration.
So I think a lot of what we're talking about comes from misinformation. When people are afraid, they start to kind of hold on tight to what they feel like are, the tenets of America. And that's when these things like, misinformation about immigration, job insecurity, things like that abound. So I know you worked on some inflation reforms and things like that. I firmly believe that if people felt more secure in their own personal lives, that they wouldn't project that outside. So can you tell us a little bit more about, policies that you are a part of to help all Americans feel more secure, so that, they don't turn their fear outwards?
Yeah, that's a great framing of it, because a lot of the things that are fear inspiring are economic in nature. It's a lot about economic instability or insecurity, a fear that your efforts, your hard work aren't being rewarded, and in fact may not be fully appreciated by our economy writ large, by the taxes you pay, that your contributions are taken for granted to the system, because we have a system where everybody puts stuff in and wants to get things out of that in just measure to their efforts. And so when you look at the economy is very uneven in its benefits, right? We have seen, for example, record low unemployment, less than 4% here in Rhode Island. We have seen the stock market be very hot. The S&P has never been, S&P 500, the index of the top 500 companies, never been higher. We see that inflation is coming down, not fast enough for everybody to feel it, because costs did, of course, go up, but it's on its monthly rate has gone, when you annualize it, has gone down, and so people should be feeling like gas prices relatively low, in sort of in the grand scheme of where they've been relative to price shocks that we face. So there's all this positive economic news, right? Small business growth high, and especially amongst entrepreneurs of color, especially Black entrepreneurs. Black wealth up. We have done specific things, but if you go to the grocery store and you see the prices for chicken are higher, if you think about the cost of higher education and that being high, so you want to provide for your next generation, for your family, if you feel like you're working harder than ever, but you don't feel like you're getting enough, well, that may have a greater impact on your emotions, and that may be fear-inducing and inspiring. And so we have things that we can do. Amongst the policy areas that I'm focused on is housing. Housing is one that we feel very acutely. In Rhode Island, we have a supply challenge, right? And when you have a supply challenge, then it spills over into the challenges around affordability. We also have, the interconnected challenge of demand. So you have low supply, high demand, cause prices to go up. And so when you have, especially an aging housing stock, and you can't sort of see the mobility, right? That means that, older folks who have homes don't necessarily have a next place to go, so they're not going to sell. You have people coming in from Massachusetts, other places who over COVID, where they're like, all right, well, the housing prices are cheaper in Rhode Island, so I'll go there. All of this, that inspires a lot of fear and concern. That's why policies that I'm supportive of are those that will help inspire the production of more housing through the low-income housing tax credit, a piece of legislation that I'm very supportive of, that can spur development, make it cheaper for home builders to build. If it's cheaper for them and they can get their return, they're more likely to build more. I'm supportive of policies around incentivizing zoning reform, because you have to build a density to deal with some of the volume-based challenge, the numbers of housing units that we need to build. I also support things like the expanding the historic preservation tax credit. We have a lot of older spaces, mill buildings, other things that can be converted into real quality housing. So a lot on the housing front. And then I also think you have to deal on the demand side. And what I mean by that is if it is too expensive, prohibitively expensive, difficult. So I am supportive of what the vice president has put forward around a first-time home buyers tax credit, expanding that. She's got something in her policies around $25,000. I don't know what the right number is, but I think you go up from where we are today, which is sort of dependent on local housing authorities. So that's a big thing, putting people on the pathway to home ownership, because we do know that a lot of wealth for most people in this country is derived from home equity. So that is an anxiety inducing thing for sure, especially if you're a parent and your kid's still at home and they're darn near 30, like, all right, well, when you get your house, and so I
That's personal to me. I feel like you're speaking of both.
yeah. Or you're a renter like me. I'm 36 years old. I'm a renter. I would like to buy a house at some point. I certainly am not capable of doing that right now based on the market. So that's one. I think when you look at energy costs, that's another area of concern. So we talk about gas prices being low, but we talk about utilities, especially in this region. That's why our investments in alternatives, it's really important. Not only is it good for our environment to get us off of fossil fuels, but also as wind development goes further, as we look at other sources. I'm studying right now fusion technology as a path forward in the coming decades. That will help ease that burden. And then you look at things like the child tax credit, right, which was for people right there in the middle who were eligible to receive a bonus credit. And the vice president put forward for that first year of life was a $6,000 tax credit, so that people, raising children, and we know that it's expensive, and we know it's a good thing for our world, bringing, children, having families. We know it's a good thing, but it's expensive. And so having an expanded child tax credit, which did remarkable things like reducing child poverty by 40+% for Black children, 50+%. Again, dealing with those anxieties. Really what most people want is just a little bit of breathing room. They're not asking for somebody to come solve all their problems, but they just want to be able to do well by themselves and those they love. And so that's from a policies perspective where we have to stay focused. That expands into Social Security and Medicare, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, doing everything we can to spur job development in the blue economy. So I got a lot of ideas. I could go on all day here, but I want to go labor. Yes.
I do want to ask another Rhode Island specific question. Hasbro.
Yeah.
Very concerned about them moving to Massachusetts, and that goes to, economic insecurity for others. So I'm very, nervous, even though I don't work for Hasbro.
Yeah.
But I understand that what they bring to Rhode Island. You have some ideas of how we can get them to stay here in Rhode Island?
Yeah. Look, I will preface this by saying, we have state-based economic, agencies like the Commerce Department, like the Commerce RI, our governor. They're the team captains. That said, I have known Hasbro my whole life, right? They've been in Pawtucket, the other side of Pawtucket from where I've grown up my whole life. I brought Hasbro toys, WWF action figures when I was a kid. So Hasbro's been in my life a long time. And I have spoken, with executives there, and I've said to them essentially, what do you need? Is it, our talent pool? Are there things I can do at the federal level to make you want to stay in Rhode Island? And sometimes you don't necessarily have the legislative tools, but what you do have is a community of support. So I want them to stay in Rhode Island. And if that's because they want to be in an environment where they have dynamic leadership that is focused on their success, that may be one part of it. But we have to continue to work together as a team. Every part of state government, every part of the delegation, we should, be helpful, whether or not I have, the blunt instrument of legislation, or if it's just about engagement, right? A lot of it is, for the business community, is where is there a climate of growth, of support, of a commitment to making investments in a place, right? And that's why it's important that we take care of our challenges on infrastructure. With all the federal funds that we have coming through, I want to make sure that we are dealing with the legacy issues that could be impactful to a business's decision on whether to be in a certain place, that we make the impact that we can on issues like education, so that they know there's a reliable pipeline of people who may come through the colleges and universities and the secondary education system as a future workforce. Right, a company makes a lot of decisions, and to make a point here is Hasbro's a very quality, important company. And the folks up the road in Massachusetts look a lot at the companies that we have here and just to check in. But we have to be able to check in as well and say, and with great unambiguous language, that we want our anchor institutions like Hasbro, our legacy historic institutions, the Hassenfeld family that started that great company. We want them to be Rhode Island for as long as they exist. And sending that message clear is something that I'll continue to do in the weeks and months ahead. And I hope that they make decisions that are consistent with them feeling at home right here in Rhode Island.
So pivoting a little bit, we know that you have been on some committees involved with climate, and we're looking at a lot of volatile climate situations all around the country. And our thoughts and our prayers are with everyone in the South and even in parts of Mexico and the Caribbean that have been negatively impacted. Can you talk to us a little bit about your work with climate? And one of the things Shahidah and I spoke about on the way here is that right now we're in New England. We're kind of like, in this tucked away in this little space where maybe we get some really bad snow. Once in a while, we might get a little, hurricane once every 30 years or something like that. But, that could change over the course of decades, over the course of our children and grandchildren's generation. So what are you doing specifically, and what do what can you tell us about things that are going to impact climate going forward in the future?
Well, look, I'll tell you right now, we are impacted by climate change in New England, in Rhode Island right now, today. Every time there's a big rainstorm, and we see them coming with more severity in recent years, right here in my district on Branch Avenue, there's flooding where cars cannot pass because it's coming so quickly. Right? When you think about the severity of our storms, they are far more intense. What we saw down in the Southeast with Helene and Milton was the product of more extreme weather. They said Milton at one point was off their measurement taking of storms. They said this was a Category 6. We don't even count a Category 6. Right? But that's because they'll be more severe. So we may not have had the big one, but we get a series of extreme moments that overwhelm our local infrastructure here. The systems can't respond as quickly. You go to neighborhoods across the 1st Congressional District, whether it's the Point in Newport or in parts of Barrington, that will be on track without severe intervention to be underwater in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. So I would actually say we are experiencing the impacts of climate change, extreme heat. Think about when we have these extreme patterns of heat. There's especially from an environmental justice angle, there are these microclimates that impact different parts of our communities. And urban heat, when you think about the combination of asphalt and a lack of a canopy of trees, can raise temperatures and impact folks' lives, especially those who are disproportionately people of color and lower income. For example, you think about all the senior high rises. A lot of those aren't designed with climate extreme temperatures, climate change driven extreme temperatures in mind. So without the right air conditioning, right air circulation, we have our seniors who are in spaces where they are susceptible to heat-related illness or worse. So that's all happening right now. So what I'm doing, one, at least as it relates to the resilience side, right? Because when you look at climate, you look at it from the mitigation and the resilience side. The mitigation, you're reducing emissions. You are trying to solve for the longer-term problem. Resilience, you're preparing for the thing that's happening, right? And you are trying to be resilient against the things that are happening. So on the mitigation side, we've got to continue to implement the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the historic law that addressed healthcare on one side, but climate on the other. And so just last week, I played a role in bringing a federal official from the Department of Treasury to Rhode Island to talk to groups and organizations about the way that they can access tax credits to do everything like installing solar. And so I brought that official here to help with that. Someone I worked with in the Biden administration when I worked at the White House. Other things we can do certainly are move to electric vehicles, getting dollars to help build out our federal contribution for the electric vehicle infrastructure. Big part of it. So those are some of the tools there, and then of course our investments in alternatives like wind. On the other side, on the resilient side, doing everything like getting funding to support coastal erosion, right? So that as we can build up and resiliently along our shoreline, which we have a long shoreline. We have a lot of little inlets and such across the state and in the first congressional district. Again, on the resilient side, especially as it relates to environmental justice, there's federal funding to plant trees, and from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, accessing that, making sure that we build out an urban canopy so that we can control for extreme heat. So there are a ton of things to do. Can we do them fast enough? We're going to try. Because the state also has very aggressive goals for 2030 and its energy usage. We might be small, but we make our impact. Massachusetts makes their impact. Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, regionally will make an impact. Everybody has some bold goals around 2030, and whether it's the state's use of energy, whether it's individuals' use of energy, whether it's doing everything we can from electric school buses. I do a lot on that because those emissions contribute to climate impacts in a very big way. So we've gotten millions, tens of millions of dollars for electric school buses across the state. I was just at an event last week kicking that off in Pawtucket. They just purchased, and then also for the public transportation side, electric public buses. And so we've gotten some funds for that. So there's a lot, but we got to do it all. It's like you can't pick off of this menu. You got to go down the whole thing.
I rode those electric buses. I love them.
Well, yeah. How is it? I got to get, the thing is my schedule makes it tough to get on, but I'm trying to take the bus more, and whenever. Well, if I can, I have to be in more places than the average person.
Welcome back. I hope that you guys enjoyed that conversation with Congressman Gabe Amo. We definitely did. I was just in awe, impressed. This is the Black man that all Black men should want to emulate.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially as a politician, we have one of the things that we talked about, and your opinion has how this election, these latest crops of politicians have divided us so. And listening to Gabe, he could be a Marjorie Taylor Greene, but we elected a real politician. We elected somebody that was for the people, not just my people, but all people. And he's out there everywhere, like we said. And this is the person that everyone should try and emulate. This is, not a Donald Trump. He doesn't lead with hate. He doesn't lead with disgust first. He's talking about bringing us all together. And I was very impressed. This man is 36 years old. I know I wasn't doing this at 36 years old.
And these are the Black jobs that we're talking about. When we think of a Black job, that's a Black job. And no one's coming in from out the country and taking that Black man's job.
No.
He's doing a great job, like you said, for all of his constituents. He's in Federal Hill. He's on the east side. He's in Smith Hill. He's in North Providence. He's wherever. He's all over Rhode Island, and he's been there for our nation as well. He goes to where his people need him. Mm-hmm. And one of the fun things that we discussed, because it was kind of a question that I wanted to ask him when I met him, is who should play him in the movie adaptation of his life, because I feel like he's got so much more career ahead of him that there'll be a a film about him, and I was really I was amused and entertained in a good way about who he said he would pick. Do you remember the people he said should play him?
No.
So Don Cheadle was one.
That was the other one the only one I remember, and I said he is way too old to
But
play.
he led with Idris Elba. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I can see it. Idris. He also mentioned Dule Hill, which would also be a great I think he could play a great Congressman Amo. But I want to throw into the ring Damson Idris
Hmm.
from Snowfall. I think he could play an amazing Gabe Amo. So we'll see who it ends up being. Yeah, we'll see.
But I did want to apologize to our viewers and listeners. We did have a technical difficulty, and that's why that part was kind of cut off. And honestly, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't even known that we had a technical difficulty. So he helped us
Yeah.
out, but we did not pick up where we thought we did, and unfortunately, we lost that bit of the interview. But he was very gracious. His staff extremely gracious,
Mm-hmm.
and it was,
Shout outs to Madeline.
yes, shout out to Madeline. I was very impressed to go to his office in Pawtucket, and I guess anybody can make an appointment and go in and speak to him about, like, concerns that they have in the community. He is very available, and that is something that I honestly don't see across the board. And since he has been in office, he's running for congressman, on this ticket. He's always been very available. He seems to be, a man of the people, and I
A
respect that.
100%.
It's
He is a man of the people. That's a great description.
so. Thank you, sir, again for joining us, and we hope that November 5th is good for you as well. That you continue to be our congressman, and we look
Knock on
forward.
wood.
Do I have any wood? I got some fake wood. I don't have it. It's nothing real. But until next time, anything, Tracy?
No, until then, we're going to be posting the congressman's handles on social media. Please show him support. If you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it. But if you want to support him in any way, if you want to see what he's doing, he's on Instagram. He is on Twitter, which is called X now. He's on socials, and he's also available at his Pawtucket office. And we at Little State Big Voices are available on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, while it lasts, and anywhere that podcasts are heard.
And try and listen to his town hall questions, because he did quite a few of those this summer, and I listened to like two of them, and people just asking him, that's what I mean about a suspo, a man of the people. So until next time, people, have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.